The Stanley Cup Final is down to a best of 5. Welcome to NHL Wraparound Stanley Cupdate for Saturday, June 7, 2025. Vic and Neil with you over the weekend. And when we did our Stanley Cup Final preview in our 3 things you need to pay attention to segment, we had a little item on the Sandpaper Seniors. And both Corey Perry and Brad Marchand certainly provided heroics in game number 2.
Oh, they sure did. And Marchand, of course, got the most important goal of the entire game. But Corey Perry's goal with 17 seconds to go was just incredible. Both of those seniors, as you call them, are making an impact on this series in a big way.
I thought as the game went on last night, it became less and less about systems and who was doing what and who was doing things wrong and et cetera, et cetera. And in the end, it's so late into the night. The game is a slog by the time you get into the second overtime that it's more a matter of who's going to make a mistake or where there's going to be a break. And on that game-winning goal, you saw a shot that was missed by Ekholm that happened to hit the boards in the right way. I thought Evan Bouchard actually made the right play coming down the right wing boards, but the puck carried him in the other direction, and that's what sprung Marchand for the game-winning goal.
Yeah.
On the pass from Lindell.
Yeah, and that's what it takes. It takes something that you're not expecting, because everything is so buttoned down that you need a mistake to be made or just something go awry that would usually not go that way. And that's the break you need.
Did you make it to the end, or was your head like bouncing off your chest?
I think I was in and out of a coma, but I did see the end. But it's hard. It's hard when you're, staying up that late to keep your concentration going.
I had a coffee IV working.
Oh.
Yeah.
Wow. How'd you get to sleep then?
Not too easy.
Yeah.
So, all right. So let's go back. Let's recap this thing. AJ Greer remained out for the Panthers, and Carter Verhaeghe and Evan Rodriguez swapped their lines with Verhaeghe moving up to the top spot. And literally seconds into the game, he set up Sam Reinhart for a great chance, which was missed.
And Reinhart isn't the guy that you want with the puck on his stick where he had it, which was basically right in the high slot.
After a high-sticking penalty by Vander Kane, Sam Bennett scores at just 2:07 of the opening period. But this is a goal that I believe the Oilers think, and I happen to agree with them, should have been disallowed because Matthias Ekholm had lost his stick, went to reach for it, and Bennett just kind of conveniently pushed it away from him. And then, of course, winds up scoring the goal, which, by the way, was his 12th on the road during these playoffs. And that set a record for most goals away from your home arena in a playoff year.
Sam Bennett is an amazing guy because the things that he does that everybody complains about that go unnoticed, that he sort of just looks around and says, I didn't do that. The moving of the stick so that Ekholm couldn't get it, and he's the guy that puts the puck in the net. By the way, when you watch that goal over again, he didn't get much on that puck, Sam Bennett. It went off his stick in a very light manner and ended up skidding into the net. But it was a tremendous play that those guys made. And the Oilers, of course, thought there should be an interference penalty on Bennett, but you can't disallow the goal because unless you call a penalty. And then he never would have got the shot. There maybe, but they didn't see it. So, or if they saw it, they didn't think it was interference.
Well, regardless, talk about Bennett for a second. How much is he going to command on the free agent market? Because there's talk that he's a $10 million player. I think the fascinating part here, and we talked about this on Cupdate on Friday, was the states that don't have a state income tax. Florida is one of them. What would it take for Florida to keep Sam Bennett if a team antes up in a taxable state say $10 million.
Well, that's where you have the CPA come in and tell you you're going to make the same money here in Florida getting X as you will in New York getting Y. And they'll figure that out in a skinny minute. I mean, that how much tax money you're saving by being in that state. And then the agent will weigh that out with Sam Bennett.
You're on a team that's defending the Stanley Cup, has now better than even money because you've got home ice advantage again of repeating. You're in warm Florida weather. You're going to make more money than you could possibly spend anyway. So somebody's got to come along with probably stupid money to actually draw him out of there.
Yeah. I don't know Sam Bennett myself, but I've heard one really good thing about him, and that came right from Paul Maurice. That said, they take a look at Samoskevich. This kid really works hard. He's come in, and Bennett has taken him under his wing and is working with him to try to help him, become a better player. And that's the only thing I've heard about Sam Bennett from a real source, which sounded good to me. I would imagine that if they were able to win this year, or even if they're not able to win, his heart must be with Florida because, his teammates, he's been there for a while, his house where he lives, all the different things that we all have when we live someplace, to walk away from them and start anew is difficult. And I agree with you. I think that to pry him out of Florida, it would have to be stupid money.
I agree. Well, I did initiate this discussion, so of course.
So you better agree with yourself.
Yeah, I think I should. So let's move a little bit further in the game. At the 7:39 mark, Nate Schmidt, passing his own blue line, was intercepted by Evan Bouchard at his own blue line. Puck goes Hedman, Arvidsson, and Kane. In all alone off the left side, beats Bobrovsky, who I thought may have lost his angle a little bit there. Game tied at 1-1.
Yeah, and he beat him on the glove side. Kane came down. It was a great shot, but he beat him clean, something you don't often see with Bobrovsky. But I got to tell you, Evander Kane, you like him or dislike him, he has been great for Edmonton during these playoffs. For a guy that didn't play the entire regular season, what an impact he's made on this playoff season.
A minute and 40 later, during a 4-on-4, which of course gives more ice to Connor McDavid, also makes it much more difficult for Florida to defend. Neutral zone speed, gets access into the Florida zone, gets the puck to Evan Bouchard, whose shot is stopped by Alex Barkov, comes right back to him, just a few feet closer, and he buries that second attempt past Bobrovsky, and it's 2-1. And again, another example of Florida doing a little bit of scrambling in their own defensive zone.
They had their two best defensive guys out there, Barkov and Reinhart, were out there. And yet Bouchard, that just goes to show you what a terrific shot he has. We all know that. And the luck of having it come off of Barkov right back onto your stick for a second shot.
So 2:18 after that, remember Nate Schmidt turned that puck over in the neutral zone before, but this time he intercepts kind of a soft clearing attempt by Kasperi Kapanen, gets the puck to Eetu Luostarinen over to Seth Jones, and it's 2-2. And Schmidt, who also had an assist on Bennett's goal, that's his fourth assist of the final already.
Nate Schmidt's playing great for the Florida Panthers, and I'll tell you, Seth Jones is playing great for the Florida Panthers as well. He snuck down. Did it remind you of the Brian Leetch goal in Game 7 against Vancouver, the way that Brian Leetch snuck down the one side there and got the feed from Zubov and put it in?
It did.
Very similar. But anyway, we regress back to Seth Jones just playing terrific for the Florida Panthers, and that was a really excellent passing play.
Where's the defense? I mean, aren't they supposed to clamp down in the Cup Final? It's 2-2 after 11 minutes and 37 seconds of play, and no feeling out, teams going right to the net. We've seen also our fair share of offensive zone penalties that have created opportunity. Obviously, the first goal by Bennett, that came as a result of an offensive zone penalty. I think we saw 4 of them, maybe in the first period, and just the discipline that you expect to see during the course of the final has not been there in either of the first periods that we've seen in games 1 and 2.
No, it's been all out. Go at him. Go at him. Nice to see. I mean, that first period was wild. This was not Jacques Lemaire and his 1995 New Jersey Devils.
Wake me up when that's over. So Bennett gets into the act again, and you'll remember in game one, it was play on a goal that he was tripped up, fell into Stu Skinner. Oh, by the way, this happens again. This time he's pushed in by Matthias Ekholm. Skinner briefly shaken up, but he's okay. But as was said on the telecast last night, this is another case when it comes to Bennett and his play in the crease, a lot of accidentally on purpose.
That's for sure. But I'm telling you, Bennett is a special player. I mean, he's involved. You can't miss Sam Bennett when you're watching this game. And speaking of not being able to miss a player, go ahead on this one. This was the most spectacular thing we've seen during this playoff season.
With a lot of spectacular things going on, the Oilers are on a power play, but Ryan Nugent-Hopkins loses his stick, so he's on his way to the bench. So Connor McDavid just takes things into his own hands. He undresses Alex Barkov and Aaron Ekblad to set up Leon Draisaitl. It's 3-2. Once again, another one-timer from Draisaitl from one of his favorite spots on the ice. Just scintillating.
But the move McDavid made to drag it back around Barkov and then through Ekblad and then over to Draisaitl. If you haven't seen that, go watch it. It is simply amazing.
The Oilers had an opportunity to extend this lead. A failed clearing attempt by Seth Jones led to a 33-second 5-on-3. But you talk about small things. And the small thing here was on 5-on-3s, how often do you see the team with the power play lose the faceoff?
Not very often, right. They got to control the face-off.
And that's what happened here. And that, of course, you lose about 15 seconds off of that. The Panthers were able to kill it off. Bobrovsky made a big save on Nurse after the second penalty expired. Period ends, though, 3-2 for the Oilers. And I thought, similar to game one, Edmonton had the first period edge.
I wouldn't say it was dramatic edge, but I would agree with you that they had the edge in that period.
Okay, let me put you on the spot. If you're the two coaches, Paul Maurice and Chris Knobloch, who had to make more adjustment coming out of period one?
Oh, I would say Florida. Absolutely.
All right. So, the start of the second period, Bobrovsky makes a key stop on Bouchard coming out of the penalty box. And then again at 1:55 after being set up by McDavid. So again, more opportunity for Edmonton to extend this lead, and it doesn't happen. Meanwhile, there's some sloppy play taking place by the Oilers. I didn't think John Klingberg had a real strong game in this one.
No, he didn't. And the second period wasn't kind to the Edmonton Oilers on a whole, just like it wasn't in game one.
And tide started to turn a little bit. Solid pressure by Florida after several Bobrovsky saves. Oilers start to turn the puck over a little bit. And eventually, Dmitry Kulikov scores the game-tying goal through his screen and caroms off Bouchard at 8:23 to tie the game at 3.
Yeah, and again, Bouchard's involved in a goal, but this time it goes off of his pants and in behind Stu Skinner. That was a big goal to tie the game at that point.
Another Oilers power play, but this time, the 12:09 mark, Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, who's been incredibly dependable throughout these playoffs, offensive zone turnover. Anton Lundell springs Brad Marchand for a breakaway goal, and now it's 4-3 Panthers.
And if anybody thought that Brad Marchand had slowed down and looks like he's getting slower, and that's why Boston traded him, I think you better watch this game on rewind, because he was fast and knew exactly what he was doing on this breakaway goal to put his team ahead 4-3.
Bobrovsky had to stop McDavid twice, in close with about 2:21 left in the second period. But similar to game one, I thought the Panthers, by and large, made the necessary adjustments, played the game on the boards. It was more of a grinding game. You saw less open ice out there. And then in the third period, it became increasingly evident that the Panthers were trying to layer their defense with forechecking, neutral zone coverage, and then, if all else fails, Sergei Bobrovsky in net. But as time started to go on, you could see, similar to game one, that the Oilers were starting to gain that Florida blue line, and they were putting a lot of pressure on during the latter half of that third period.
They needed to, because they were trying to catch up again. And you got to think that Florida probably mentally at least went into the defensive mode, and the Oilers mentally went into a very offensive place, and that sort of tilted the scale.
Panthers almost got away with it because Bobrovsky stopped Nugent Hopkins in close with 4:15 left, then got a glove on a shot by Connor Brown a little bit less than a minute later, and then went post to post off Leon Draisaitl with a minute left. But then a face-off win, Jake Wallman shot, Corey Perry, unbelievable job, out-muscling Eetu Luostarinen, ties the game at 4 with 18 seconds left in regulation.
And as we said, Perry is a right-hand shot. And if he was a left-hand shot, he wouldn't have scored that goal. But the puck happened to come out right to where his stick was, and he was able to put it back into the net, and we're going to overtime.
I found it interesting, the exchange between Eddie Olczyk and Brian Boucher, saying that, and this is Olczyk first, saying that if Edmonton was to win this second game in overtime, he would not thought that the Panthers would be able to overcome it. And Boucher disagreed with him, and I disagreed with it as well. I sit there and I watch the Panthers, and nothing seems to faze this club. Going into the overtime, unlike game one where Florida started stronger, the Oilers had the better of the play early in the overtime.
And I would disagree with Eddie too, and say that, did he watch them in the Leafs series? Because they went down 0-2 to the Leafs and came back and won that series. Both of these teams are right in this series. Again, we talked about the unpredictability of this series, and I think we've been proven right already that not only is it going into overtime each game, but both teams have come out with one win. I mean, if there's ever a series that looks like it could go the distance and be full chicken, it's this one.
I did take the Oilers in 5, didn't I?
I think you did.
And you went full cluck mode.
Full cluck, full chicken, full Swiss chalet, 7 games for the Panthers.
You know, Button's going to be right, and this will end in 6.
And he said Panthers too, didn't he?
He did. He did.
Well, we'll see if he'll keep that buttoned up.
Or snapped up.
Yeah.
As we'd mentioned, the Oilers did have the better of the play early on in the overtime, but then a little before the midway point, Klingberg with a turnover, and Marchand is stopped by Skinner, and then his second attempt hit the post and was cleared away by Klingberg. And then Skinner had to stop Reinhart and Jones in succession just before the mid-period scrape. And then Sam Reinhart, on a clear breakaway with 4:33 left, missed the net after Wallman kind of toe-picked in the slot, and Reinhart went in all alone and just missed.
The guy you don't want to see with the puck on a breakaway, if you're the Edmonton Oilers, is Sam Reinhart, and yet he missed the net. So that was a huge break for Edmonton.
Evan Rodriguez also had a little backhander that went between Skinner and the net, went past his back and went right through the crease wide. So a lot of good opportunities, and we started to see kind of the heaviness of the Panthers during, as I said at the beginning, what was starting to become a slog, because everybody's legs were starting to look heavy in this one heading into the second overtime. Well,
and they had to be. They had to be tired, these guys, and because they're going full speed every second, every shift.
Heading into the second overtime, Marchand stopped by Skinner early. Bobrovsky had to make a stop on Kapanen on a redirect at 7:13. And then finally, the 8:04 mark, similar to earlier in the game, Lundell springs Marchand on a breakaway after the puck carried to him off the boards. We had mentioned that Evan Bouchard made the right move going towards the boards because that's where the puck was supposed to come, if not for the carom. Nonetheless, second breakaway from Marchand. And is this not why the Panthers acquired this guy from Boston?
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, everything the Panthers have done has clicked. When you think about it, every move they make seems to be working for them. And two breakaway goals by Brad Marchand. And again, I'm just going to emphasize, people said, oh, he's slowing down. He's not as fast as he used to be. Well, I don't know about that, because on these two breakaways, he didn't look at all slow. He's not Connor McDavid fast, but he's fast enough.
And great hands, fifth career playoff overtime goal. I do want to make one other note here, because I thought Gustav Forsling was fabulous in this game, because he had to make a lot of plays in one-on-one situations, a couple against Connor McDavid, and he was exceptional, and that shouldn't fall through the cracks in this one.
No, he was exceptional. And whenever you're going out there all the time against 97 and 29, you got your hands full, and he did a great job in that.
Anything else to add before we wrap up Game 2?
Just for when Game 3 comes around, buckle up your seatbelt, because it's going to be another great one.
Saturday, a travel day, an extra day off in this series. So Game 3, Monday, 8 o'clock Eastern, down in Sunrise on TNT.
By the way, how far is it from Edmonton to Sunrise or Fort Lauderdale?
By air or by car?
Well, let's say by car, because I'm too cheap to pay for airfare.
Well, it's probably going to cost you more in gas because it's almost 3,000 miles.
Oh. Oh, well, how long does it take to fly?
About 5.5 hours.
All right. I don't know that I'll be doing that.
Yeah, I need you to splurge a little here. A couple of news items on this Saturday. The Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year has been given out, and Neil, you have pumped Spencer Carberry's tires the entire year, and finally this comes to pass. He is awarded with the Jack Adams, beating out Scott Arniel and Martin St. Louis.
I thought that Scott Arniel could win it and maybe should win it with the remarkable year that they had. And his first year as head coach of the Winnipeg Jets, I'll remind you, and he won the President's Trophy. Spencer Carberry did a special job last year getting that Washington Capitals team into the playoffs somehow, just to be swept by the New York Rangers. But then when they came back this year, they were incredible. They were second to Winnipeg all season long, and obviously, Spencer Carberry has the buy-in of all his players, and he did a terrific job with Washington. He won by a hair, in my book, over Arniel. I thought Scott Arniel did a fabulous job, too. Marty St. Louis did a good job, obviously, with Montreal. Nobody had them in the playoffs. And these awards are voted on, by the way, before the playoffs start. But they do take into account the final standings. He did do a good job because no one foresaw that the Montreal Canadiens could be in the playoffs this year.
And how cool was this? You know, the NHL has done a great job springing surprises on recipients of these awards. And we saw on Friday that Johnny Gaudreau's widow, Meredith, presented Sean Monahan with the Masterton Trophy. And for this one, Spencer Carberry was sitting in his TV studio with Joe Beninati, and his wife and kids walked in to present him with the award.
That's really, really, really cool. I didn't know that. You're telling me that for the first time. So that's really a nice way of doing that. And although I think he probably knew all he had to do was look at any betting site of who's going to win the Jack Adams Award, and he was always the top guy in that. But good for Spencer, the former ECHL Spencer Carberry.
Actually, first coach ever to win Coach of the Year in the ECHL, the AHL, and the NHL.
That's something to put on your resume.
I think he will. Something else to go on somebody else's resume, Derek Lalonde, hired as Maple Leafs assistant. That vacancy was created on Craig Berube's staff in Toronto when Lane Lambert took the Seattle head coaching position. Lalonde was replaced in December in Detroit by Todd McClellan. And do you know another claim to fame for Derek Lalonde?
That he looks like Dr. Evil?
All right, that's enough. He actually attended a small school that my younger son Jake attends, the Massachusetts College of Liberal Arts in Northwestern Mass.
Oh, that's great. Congratulations.
Didn't play goal there, but attended there.
Okay. And now it's time for This Day in Stanley Cup History.
Boy, you are beautiful with this. So a lot of stuff here. So we got a little bit of a theme going here. First time, long time. So we've got two first-time Stanley Cup winners that clinched on this date, and one that waited a long time in between cups. So we will work our way backwards here. 2018, the Capitals win their first ever Stanley Cup, defeating Vegas in Game 5 of the final. Goals by Devontae Smith-Pelly and Lars Eller, 2:31 apart in the third period, overcame a 3-2 deficit. Alex Ovechkin finally gets his Stanley Cup, wins the Conn Smythe Trophy, scored 15 goals and 27 points in 24 games in the playoffs 7 years ago.
I remember it like it was yesterday. And isn't it funny? Lars Eller is now back on the Washington Capitals.
Yep. It all works. It all comes full circle. In 2004, and we had mentioned the Tampa Bay Lightning forcing that game. They win their first ever Stanley Cup. Ruslan Fedotenko scores both goals in a 2-1 win over the Flames in Game 7. Brad Richards, the Conn Smythe Trophy winner, 12 goals, 14 assists in 23 games. And Dave Andreychuk, captain of the Lightning, finally wins the Stanley Cup in his 1,759th game. That was the most ever for a player to wait to win their first Stanley Cup.
And it still is, isn't it? It still is the longest that anybody's waited.
Yeah.
And I think that wasn't that also his last game?
No, he actually played 42 games after the lockout.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I did a little bit of research on that about 1 o'clock in the morning, just so you know.
You always do.
1997, the Detroit Red Wings win their first Stanley Cup since 1955. Remember Darren McCarty's cup-clinching goal in the second period going inside out on Yanni Niinema, and that completed a 4-game sweep over the Flyers. Mike Vernon won the Stanley Cup for the Calgary Flames in 1989, and 8 years later, captures the Conn Smythe, winning the Cup for the Red Wings to end their 42-year drought.
And that was Terry Murray was the coach of the Philadelphia Flyers back then. And there's a little bit of controversy during the playoffs. And that was, of course, Lindros's first time ever being in the finals. Mm-hmm. And the Legion of Doom. But Detroit winning the Stanley Cup for Mr. and Mrs. Ilitch since the first time since 1955. The Ilitches had owned the team at that time for 15 years, since 1982. And they had poured a lot of money into the Detroit Red Wings to get to this point where they could win their Stanley Cup. Of course, we all know that a year later, they'd be able to celebrate another one.
That they would, against the Washington Capitals in a 4-game sweep. And one final note, in 1993, John LeClair became the second player ever to score overtime goals in consecutive final round games, as the Canadians beat the LA Kings 3-2 in Game 4 to go up 3-1 in that series. Bones Rawley, in 1950 for the New York Rangers, was the other player to score in consecutive overtimes in the final. This goal by LeClair was the last of the 10 consecutive overtime wins for the Habs during the 93 playoffs. And you'll also remember in that game, right before overtime hit, Patrick Waugh stopped Thomas Sandstrom, and there's that memorable close-up of Waugh winking at Sandstrom, and you pretty much knew that it was curtains for the Kings there.
Yeah, and of course, Sandstrom was such an annoying player, wasn't he? I actually traded him to the Kings back then.
Was he that
and
annoying?
No. He was annoying to the opposition. You loved him on your team, though. But I remember that wink. Patrick was famous for that, along with a lot of other things that he did during his glorious career.
What a capper for the Canadians, because we talked about the 10 wins. And Michael Farber, who was working for the Montreal Gazette, very good writer. And during this run, he decided, okay, every overtime is a 50-50 proposition. You're going to either win or lose, right? So he goes into his hotel and he decides, I'm going to flip a coin 100 times and see how many times it comes up heads, how many times it comes up tails. And it ended up 52-48. And there was no run of longer than 4 heads or 4 tails. So that kind of put a little bit of perspective on how unbelievable this streak was for the Canadians in 1993.
Yeah, it really was incredible. And Jacques Demers, of course, was the coach of Montreal back then. And he'd been our coach in Detroit in the mid-'80s. And so I knew Jacques pretty much and was really happy for him to finally get his Stanley Cup.
We started with overtime. We end with overtime. And a reminder, our website is NHLWraparound.com. Please subscribe and like us. And Neil and I will return on Sunday to preview Game 3, the Stanley Cup Final between the Panthers and Oilers. Have a great day.